Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland Brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland Brothers. Come on, be in it and join in the fun. Travel all over Australia.
Well, in this program we've got quite a bit of variety for you. We're going to take a look at one of Australia's national symbols, perhaps the symbol of Western Australia really, the Australian Black Swan. But we're not going to Western Australia to film it, we're going to Ballarat here in Victoria.
And then we are going to Western Australia, but to look at it, something quite different. We're going inland from Dampier to the Hamersley Ranges to have a look at some beautiful gorges that carve their way through the ranges there.
And then finally, to wrap up, some real action, shooting rapids. Australia's top canoeists perform for us here at Nymbodia in New South Wales. Action-packed canoeing adventure.
We're in the Pilbara country of Western Australia, heading through the Hamersley Ranges to answer a request from Tony Anderson of Perth, Western Australia. When I was working in Port Hedland, I went out to the Gorge country in the Hamersley Ranges. Red Gorge is one of the best I saw, and I think equal to any scenic spot in Australia. Could you film this area and give me your opinion on the scenic beauty there? Well, Tony, we're at Red Gorge now, so I'm going down to have a look and I'll let you know. At first glance, the country appears to be too flat to have gorges of any size. The reason for this is that we're already on a plateau in the spectacular Hamersley Range. This range of red mountains is situated just above the Tropic of Capricorn, 300 kilometres inland from Dampier. A friend, Maury Spencer, is with me on this trip as we follow the rough track which leads down from the parking area to a vantage point that overlooks a spot where three gorges intersect: Red Gorge, Hancock Gorge and Weeno Gorge. We're in the Hamersley Range National Park that covers an area of roughly 600,000 hectares. The range contains thousands of millions of tonnes of iron ore, said to be the richest iron resources in the world. The rocks are over 1,000 million years old and were deposited at the bottom of an ocean. These spectacular gorges have been eroded by the torrential rains of wet seasons over millions of years to reveal the mineral strata which changes colour with the sun. This huge trench in the range is Red Gorge. We hope to be able to climb down to the river below. And this narrow chasm is called Weeno Gorge, and we should be able to work our way down from the head of Weeno to the point where it intersects with the much bigger Red Gorge. Weeno is very narrow, and we wondered what it would be like in flood. The sun never reaches the depths of Weeno Gorge, but it's beautifully cool on a hot day. The water is cool and sweet. This gorge was named after an Aboriginal called Weeno from Mulga Down Station. Weeno was the real discoverer of the blue asbestos in the area. In some places it's impossible to get around the edge of the waterhole. It's a hot day, so I might as well cool off. We're not the only ones enjoying the water.
Well, Tony, from what we've seen so far, I think I'd have to agree with you. This is one of the most beautiful places I have seen anywhere in Australia. We'll see what it's like when we get a bit further down the gorge.
The last waterfall in Weno drops 60 metres into Red Gorge, a spectacular sight. The Hamersley Range was discovered by F.C. Gregory in 1861, and it is just as untouched here today as it would have been then. The last climb down into Red Gorge is a dangerous one. But a rewarding experience when you reach the bottom. For sheer grandeur and rugged beauty, I would have to agree with Tony Anderson of Perth when he says that these gorges are equal to any scenic spot in Australia.
Travelling as we do, we often come across black swans, but we never seem to get close enough to really film them properly. But we've come to Ballarat, and right in the middle of the city we find a lake covered in black swans. With me is a fellow called Frank Murray. Now Frank, is there something you wanted to ask us?
Oh yes, I like the Leyland Brothers to take a photo of it and put it on the television.
Lake Wendouree in the heart of Ballarat is famous for its black swans, but to Frank they're extra special. He hand feeds them with bread scraps. How long have you been doing it for?
4 years.
4 years. You come every week?
Every week, twice a week.
Gee, they're pretty tame, aren't they?
Oh, it's very tame.
And when the young ones come, are they tame?
Oh, well, they're a little bit shy for a while, and then they get used to you know. They generally follow the truck around.
Oh, they know the truck?
Oh, yes, they know it. Yeah.
What made you start doing it?
Oh, just like animals and birds and things like that.
You found some spare bread and brought it down?
Bread, and better than throwing it to the tip, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Oh, I've fed kangaroos and that, but I've never seen swans taking it out of anyone's hand like that.
Yeah.
Frank moves his van around the foreshores, handing out a large supply of bread, which he gathers from the leftovers at motels around the town. It's an impossible task to distribute the bread evenly, a heartwarming relationship between man and nature. According to Frank, they only accept hand feeding for a few years. The little cygnets will come back for a couple of years, then they become wary of man and remain in the larger breeding colonies in the heart of the lake, rarely visiting the shoreline.
Hello.
The graceful Black Swan, an Australian symbol, was considered to be some kind of joke when news of their existence first reached Europe from early expeditions to Australia. In Europe, swans are white. To Frank, they're no joke. With the bread finally run out, he moves off until next time.
I think they're beautiful, don't you? I'm glad Frank asked us to come and show them to you.
We have a letter from Mr. D.F. White from Lismore who says, "We enjoyed your film about the canoe trip down the Mile River so much that we'd like to ask the Leyland Brothers to do something similar again. But this time, can we see some real rapids?" Well, we know what you mean by real rapids, Mr. White, but we don't really think that we're capable of tackling them. That's the sort of thing for experts. But we do agree, though, that it makes good action. So we've come to Nymbodia in New South Wales, where the Australian Canoe, Slalom and Wildwater Championships are being held. And to find out a little bit more about what's involved, I have with me Mr. Frank Whitebrook. Frank, you're one of the principal organisers behind the championships, I understand?
Yes, that's right. I'm chairman of the competition committee, and each year the Australian Canoe Federation run an annual Slalom and Wildwater Championships, and this year it was New South Wales' turn for Australia. And we've held it here at Nymbodia in the course that the Northern Canoe Clubs have developed. And we've also invited New Zealand to participate in this one, as well as 5 other Australian states.
Now, this looks a pretty rough sort of a course. Is it the sort of thing that you'd expect a novice to be able to tackle?
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, we discourage novices or beginners from moving into water like this, and it's a pity that sometimes you find people purchasing canoes and not having the wisdom that you've expressed yourself. They move onto water thinking that all you have to do is come down in the water, and they find that as soon as they start to turn, they get into trouble, and there have been tragedies caused by people not joining clubs and learning how to do it before they venture into this sort of water.
And safety is one of your big things. I notice helmets are worn on all competition.
Oh, yes, Mel. Helmets are worn, life jackets, and all the boats are tested for buoyancy inside them, and there are hand loops on them so they can be pulled out easily. And safety is number one in every regard with a registered canoe club with the Australian Canoe Federation. We test the life jackets for buoyancy before they're approved by the association, and each one must hold 6 kilograms of steel. We have a tub of water, wrap the life jacket in it and push it to the bottom, and if it doesn't come to the top, we advise the paddler that it's an unsatisfactory life jacket.
The camping grounds at the championship site is packed with over 200 canoeists from all over Australia and New Zealand. They're within a few hundred metres of the canoe course, which starts at the outlet of the powerhouse. Even the youngest competitors set off fearlessly into the raging rapids and demonstrate remarkable skill. The object of the sport is not just to negotiate the rapids without capsizing, but to carry out manoeuvres along the course and pass between various poles, known as gates. They must complete the full course in the best time. Then, for each mistake they make on the run, points are deducted. If the canoeists touch a pole or negotiate a gate in the wrong direction, they're penalised. Some gates must be passed backwards, and some must be tackled against the current. The symbol above each gate indicates to the paddler which way he must tackle it. Even the quieter stretch, known as Easy Street by the competitors, will be rough enough for most people. The real skill is not just paddling the canoe into the various spots, but executing the manoeuvres in the fastest possible time. To do this, the paddler must read the water and use the dead water called stoppers. Driving the bow or the stern into a stopper, with the rest of the canoe still in the fast-flowing water, can spin the canoe rapidly and line it up for the next gate. Two-man or Canadian canoes also tackle the rough course, but by the time they reach the section known as the tennis court rapids, the action really begins. Even a capsize doesn't mean a skillful team is out of the competition. By the time the canoeists reach the end of the course, they're pretty exhausted, but still have to complete some fairly complex manoeuvres with turns and reverse gates.
Right over the bank. Right over the bank, is it?
Not all competitors reach the final smooth water to pass through the last gate and the finish line in reverse. And considering the number of competitors which tackle the rapids during the 4 days, the injuries are very low.
Safely down the top stopper,
Most are out of the event on the famous tennis court rapids, providing spectacular action for both canoeists and spectators. With the aid of the slow-motion camera, let's see what it's like to really ride some wild water. Rescue teams are positioned at all the dangerous points along the course, and once a canoeist has abandoned his craft, they act quickly. At no time must any spectator help or interfere with the canoeist, even though he may capsize. As long as the paddler remains in the canoe, he's still in the event. Split-second timing and lots of practice are needed to execute a perfect run through these rapids. But it's the unsuccessful runs which provide as much action for the cameras and the enthusiastic spectators. The style of the canoeists and the design of the canoes has improved greatly over the 110 years since the sport began. These fiberglass, lightweight canoes are a far cry from the first timber model built by the sport's founder, a Scot, John McGregor, who started all this in 1865. In 1972, the one-man slalom canoe was included in the Olympic Games program for the first time. And from these national titles, Australia's top canoeists will be selected for the next Olympics. The action and spectacle of shooting the wild water is certainly one of the best spectator sports I've ever seen. And I hope that this is what Mr. White in Lismore meant by real rapids.
Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland Brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland Brothers. Come on, me in and then join in the fun. Travel all over Australia. Ask the Leyland Brothers.